My name is Paul Kennedy. I'm from the psychology department. We've shared an office for 20 years, which has been just a pleasure and a privilege and an adventure. I'm also the director of something called the Institute for the Study of Religion and Community Life, which is sponsoring this event, which sadly is called Dominique Treboux' last, literally and figuratively and literally, tears to our eyes, as we said, last lecture, at least for the moment, at least in this capacity. I'm sure we'll be hearing lots from her as time goes on. The original format was going to be a roast, given by her present and past lab students, but too many of them volunteered and we wouldn't hear all afternoon. So we changed, we quickly did a little switcheroo, a little pivot. In the interest of time, I can only just stipulate things you already know in terms of what an extraordinary teacher Dominique has been, teaching really difficult concepts and students gaining mastery while they're spending half of the time laughing their heads off somehow because she makes it fun. An accomplished researcher, valued colleague, many of her colleagues from distinguished folks from Stony Brook down the road, her grad school friend Liz have all come to join her. Such diverse groups of people that I think in a way only Dominique could attract so many people. Intellectual leader of the faculty, cherished friend to so many, and innovative, tirelessly, indefatigably, if that's the word, innovative chairperson of our department for so long. So many minors, new thrusts, new majors, 4+1 master's programs came out of her just genius and inspiration. It was wonderful and it was exhausting. The scariest words we could hear on a Monday morning was Dominique saying, I had this really great idea when I was walking the dog last night. You knew that something wonderful was about to happen for our students, and you knew that you'd all be working harder for a while. So I'll stipulate all that. What I want to briefly tell you is really the very special thing that I think I had the front row seat. No extra credit for Loicono. By sharing a room with her for these 20 years. And that is the extraordinary, gifted, dedicated, driven quality of her mentorship of students. So many of them are here, but they're all over the world at this point and have benefited so much from the kind of direction, guidance, and generalized life coaching that Dominique so generously and convincingly and sometimes hilariously and user-friendly develops to them. It's really changed lives. Students would often come in with a mundane concern. They'd need to get something signed for dropping or adding a course or something like that, or special permission for something. And they would leave 20 or 30 minutes later with something really transformational having happened in that dialogue. They thought they were there just to sort of get a drop ad form. And before the conversation was over, they had somehow signed up for her bus trip to the 92nd Street Y talk that coming weekend. And then she was strategizing with them about, okay, so you tell your boss at Uncle Giuseppe's, you can't work the Thursday night shift because you're hanging out with Jane Goodall. He'll buy it. And it always worked. And they tried it and it worked, okay? Or she'd be going, a student would mention that they want to go to grad school for counseling. And she said, well, yeah, okay, but wait a minute, I see here that you haven't had an internship. You are to take this form and return it to the morning, and they would do an internship, they would thrive at it, they would grow professionally and skills-wise, and their life would be changed again. What was my next one? Oh, or a student would come in with just a statistical question, and they'd show some promise. And before you knew it, they had signed up for Dominique's really celebrated, wonderful attachment lab, research lab, for concepts they hadn't heard about yet, but that they were going to be steeped in, and it was going to sort of be such an intellectually broadening and skills building experience for them and give them the kind of paradigm that they would take into grad school, into their clinical work, and into their personal relationships in this really very rich way. My favorite is a young fellow who came in and just asked to borrow her stapler. That's what he thought. And he left 20 minutes later with an application for study abroad. Or it might have been Oxford, which experiences that she She was the founding person with Chris Frost on these wonderful gardening experiences. And again, this will change something like that. The Oxford one, by the one, comes with a weekend excursion in Paris. And I never was quite clear, is it a 15-hour or 15-mile bilingual walking tour? Can anybody say? It's more than I could do, I know that. Okay. 19 miles. Pardon me. Okay, I'm underselling.
It was good for them, okay? It was good.
And from all of these experiences, what you see, and I'm almost done, I promise. From all of these experiences, what you see is students coming back from the internship or the study abroad, or the research presentations, doing posters with her all around the country, just with their lives changed, as I said, and with a kind of poise and confidence and satisfaction. And if there is such a thing as healthy swagger, you saw it semester after semester, people growing personally and professionally and interpersonally with each other as she formed a rich community. So the basic dynamic here is students must be warned that if they get too close to that desk as they walk into that room, they will be pulled into the gravitational force of this glowing planet of sort of new ideas and rich opportunities. As I close, I don't think Dominique would mind my saying, I was always kind of like a country boy, blue-collar factory town from Massachusetts, who was listening to her speak French half the time on the phone, the Manhattan restaurateur person. I don't think she'd mind my saying that life gave her, I think, early on sort of opportunities that she made the most of, that she modeled in so many ways. And it became like her mandate, her quest, her compulsion, perhaps, in a wonderful way, to make those same opportunities, to pay it forward, and to generously encourage the life and development of generations and cohorts of our students. Since this is the Religion Institute, allow me one little quote. An early Christian thinker, Saint Irenaeus, in one of the first or second century, Tom could probably tell me, is famous for having said, "The glory of God is the human person fully alive." And I think that quote, more than any, in so many ways, sort of represents Dominique's style of living vibrantly, all in, passionately, and of making sure that everybody else that comes into her orbit has that same opportunity. We thank her for that work and labor of love, and for 20 years that St. Irenaeus would have found truly glorious. Now the good part starts.
I just want to say, teaching means and standard deviations is a lot less emotional than this. It's great to see everybody here. Wow. Spans my whole professional career. I've got my friend Liz here, who knew me from graduate school. Back in my early 20s, I think she's the person who's known me here the longest. And no, you may not ask her what I was doing. And all of you here today were certainly my thoughts when I was preparing my talk today. As you can tell, Dr. Kennedy is quite the wordsmith. So you won't be surprised to know that when I got the email inviting me to do this last lecture, my reactive self, very susceptible to flattery, immediately replied yes. And as soon as I heard the swoosh of the sent email, I suddenly felt like the crow, who was a victim of flattery as portrayed in Jean La Fontaine's 17th century fable, a fable that I once knew by heart, but apparently in my old age forgot. I panicked. I asked myself if Dr. Kennedy and Dr. Petriano, the directors of the Institute of Religion and the two most beloved faculty in the college, faculty who have long waiting lists for their classes, and whenever you mention their names, faculty, students, staff, myself alike, say, I love Dr. Petriano. And I wondered, did they forget, like I did, that I teach the most hated courses in the psychology department? statistics, research methods, and thesis. Okay, I carried my weight. Hang on. My classes were full. Thank you very much. But that is because they are required courses. And I'm often the only faculty member teaching them. So as the pins and needles of self-doubt poked me, sometimes really hard, I took a deep breath, something that I'm often told to do, and I did what we teach our students to do, which is to rely on our education when faced with a quandary. I am a developmental psychologist, which means that I am interested in understanding how most people make it through the life course, from infancy to old age. I'm particularly interested in how early experiences influence development, especially relationships. And I thought of the work of Erik Erikson, a child psychoanalyst and the first lifespan theorist who talked about development across the lifespan. He argued that throughout our lives at particular stages, we have certain tasks to complete. He said in old age, our task is to reflect on the life we have lived, what we have accomplished, our regrets, and the meaning of those experiences. So I want to thank the Institute for giving me the impetus to reflect on my professional life and for providing this forum so I can share my thoughts with you for what is the utility of a thought, if not shared with others to ponder and debate. My directives were to share with my students whatever I wish to impart, it's a little dangerous, about my discipline, my vocation of teaching, life, society. My remarks today are centered on my work as an educator, a researcher, a psychologist, but these thoughts are tinged by my experience as a daughter of immigrant parents, one who went to school to the age of 12 and the other to the age of 16, both in a foreign country. Experiences as a first-generation female college student, a young adult denizen of New York City, a wife, a mother, a grandmother, a colleague, and a friend. In all these roles, I have faltered many times. And I'm so grateful to all of you for looking past my numerous transgressions with patience, understanding, and for giving me a hand up so that I could regroup, move forward, and be better. And of course, I could not have walked through the halls of St. Joseph's for over 20 years and not be infused with the spirit of the Sisters of St. Joseph's, a group of women who have a long legacy, starting in the Middle Ages, of helping the forgotten, the neglected, the hated. Close to our heart are one special group of sisters, a group in 1916, a year in which across the nation, approximately 11,000 bachelor degrees were conferred to women, mostly affluent women. These sisters started this school to help poor women get an education to improve their lives and the lives of others. In the day-to-day, this eternal spirit of selfless service reminded me, and I expect our college's collective unconscious, of our shared humanity at this point in time, and of course, time and place, and that we are all deserving of being seen. Finally, because it is impossible to do so, my ruminations are sensitive to the zeitgeist in which we live. For all my professional career, reflecting what I believe to be important, there have been two themes that have preoccupied my thoughts. My teaching of the rational, logical, unemotional world of research, and my research on the irrational, mysterious, emotional world of love, and where the two might meet. Albert Einstein said, the value of an education in liberal arts is not the learning of many facts, but the training of the mind to think something that cannot be learned in textbooks. This explains why I chose to teach research methods every semester, often twice a semester, for 20 years. Yes, thank you very much, for an estimated 84 times. The psychology major who came in every class with a look in their eyes telling me, tell me again, why do I need this information? I just want to understand and help people. Given that we're about to begin our finals, this might not be the right things to say to my students, but I made this choice not because 20 years from now, when you took my classes, you would remember the difference between a mixed group design versus a factorial design, but rather my course would make you good critical thinkers. Each discipline has its specific way of training the mind. In my field, psychology, we follow the scientific method. To paraphrase the astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson, the scientific method is an entire exercise in finding what is true. In the case of psychology, an entire exercise in finding out what is true about feelings, thoughts, and behaviors, including how they develop, what they lead to, and how to change them. And by training the mind to think like a psychological scientist, I expected you would be able to judge what is true and what is not true, what is reliable and what is not reliable, what should be believed and what should not be believed, what is authentic and what is fake. A valuable asset when deciphering the rhetoric of our leaders, evaluating scientific claims, and assessing the authenticity of the people in our lives. I hoped that by actively involving you in the research projects, you would gain a profound guttural understanding of the value of science, which in turn would ensure that your professional work would be based only on evidence-based practices versus your beliefs or your experiences, that you would hold the same expectations for policymakers and stand against any derision of the merit of science. And you would be attentive to your world, because as Plato stated thousands of years ago, the price of indifference to public affairs is to be ruled by evil men. And I hoped that the mantra, show me the data, would be part of your everyday cognitive repertoire, leading you to know the difference between a personal belief based on an internal standard of evidence and an emergent truth based on the rigors of science. That this mantra, show me the data, would provide the skepticism needed when a favorite influencer, politician, or loved one gave information as stated as fact. I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to use grandma as an example because nobody can get upset with grandma. But you can put any person that you want in my role as grandma. Anyway, so imagine when a beloved grandma tells you that dark chocolate cures all ailments, and it is that fact. Okay. And she tells you this wonderful story about chocolate, how for generations the female line of the family has passed down secrets on how to best take advantage of the restorative powers of chocolate, that it should be eaten at the end of the day alone, to be savored for at least 5 minutes, to only take one piece because the second bite is never as good as the first, and hence the benefits diminish. And she backs up her claims with this news story that she saw on TV about a study that touted the benefits of eating chocolate. You, because you were trained as a psychological scientist, would know not to be swayed by her good storytelling abilities or her position of authority in the family clan, or because she told you the same story 40 times. You would know that grandma's experience does not include a control group. Just sitting for 5 minutes may have had the same effect. That grandma might be operating under the assumption of an illusory correlation that two things seem to go together, but in fact they do not. In this case, perhaps the confounding variable is cognac, grandma's French, that grandma has with her chocolate. That unlike a scientist, her observations were not systematic. She recalls only the times the chocolate made her feel better, but not the times when she did not feel better. That confirmation bias is a play when she's looking for information to back her claim, that she unintentionally attended to those studies that confirmed her views on the benefits of chocolate, but ignored the others. And finally, kudos to grandma. She looked for science to confirm the knowledge gained from experience, but she failed to ask about the study and did not realize the finding was based on 20 mice and that the size of the effect was small and barely significant. The shame of it all. But even though you know grandma's claims for the benefit of eating dark chocolate did not meet the standards of scientific proof, you will eat a dark chocolate every night and feel better, not because of the benefits of chocolate, but because of your connection to grandma who loves you. Which brings me to my area of research, relationships and connections. I was fortunate to be trained by the best, Everett Waters in attachment theory, Judith Kroll, and for aggression in interpersonal relationships, Dan O'Leary, they're here with us today. Anyway, so my life's work has focused on understanding how an infant learns about love in the arms of its mother, and how such early experiences influence their relationships with people they are close to, like their partners and children, and those who they are not close to, like strangers. For the child, being loved means that when he is frightened or stressed, he goes running to his mother and is comforted. And all the fear or stress is replaced by a complete feeling of security. And then he can go back to his work of exploring and mastering his environment. Boldly stated, I regard the desire to be loved and cared for as a being integral part of human nature throughout adult life. In other words, there are similarities in the nature of close relationships in infancy and adulthood. Having a secure base is a powerful thing. Although an attachment figure may not prevent the capriciousness of life events when we find ourselves at the edge of the abyss, small or large, the promise, the expectation, comfort and reassurance will help us take a step towards safety. When we leave our mother's arms, being loved in the ways we need to be loved, to feel safe and secure is quite challenging, especially when we were not well loved in those early years. David Brooks has further argued that the times in which we live have contributed to an avoidance of love and connection. The social media's focus on appearance, the socio-political world that emphasizes narcissistic tendencies and neglects the importance of other, and the forms of communications that do not allow for knowing others. These all contribute to the avoidance of connection. Yet, study after study consistently points to the importance of relationships through our lives. Our well-being requires connection, deep connection. Eric Fromm differentiated between infantile love and mature love, and I quote, infantile love follows the principle, I love because I am loved. Mature love follows the principle, I am loved because I love. This importance of loving other was brought home to me when I went to a talk about the long-term effects of affective deprivation on children, based on the real lives of institutionalized children of Romania, institutionalized because of the pro-natality policies of an elected president turned dictator. The horrific outcomes of deprivations are too numerous to list. I want to highlight the concept of purpose and resilience. When I asked the researchers why they thought some children did better than others, they replied the siblings. And interestingly, it was the older siblings who did the best. They thought it was because the older sibling had a purpose to their day, to their being, which was to love and take care of their younger sibling. I want to argue that the worth of having others' purpose transcends beyond family relationships. Again, research has substantiated the importance of non-family adults in the lives of adolescents and young adults to help them connect and master their world. Whenever two people meet, there are really 6 people present, William James wrote. There is each man as he sees himself, each man as the other person sees him, and each man as he is. And I would argue that these 6 people mutually influence each other to the benefit of all. I offer my experience as an educator to support these observations and to further argue that it is our responsibility as adults to care for those we meet who are younger and more vulnerable than ourselves. Although my husband and children have been my life force, you, my students, have been my purpose outside the home. In my role as a non-family adult, in addition to the classroom settings, I consistently thought about ways to help you grow into who you wanted to become or who you were meant to be. I push. Hold you out of your comfort zones. What'd you say? Moving the finish line repeatedly inside and outside the classroom, knowing that you could do better than what you thought you could. We attended movies, plays, museums, and concerts, learning how other disciplines find and express their truth. And relying on our senses, we learned more about the human condition. We walked through the streets of Oxford, the oldest university of England, founded almost 1,000 years ago, and marveled at the knowledge questers who came before us, their successes and failures on which our knowledge is based, and shared in our mystification that some people dare minimize the importance of higher education. In Romania, on a trip led by Dr. Kathy Frost, every night at dinner, we shared our highs and lows and got to relive the day through the eyes of another. In Paris, on one day, we walked the streets, been alluded to, for 19 minutes. I warned them. I had warned them to get in shape. Okay, because using the metro would get us to our destination, but the journey would be missed. And I got to see how you saw Paris and saw things big and small that I would not have seen had I traveled the streets alone. And when our evening ended around 11 p.m. at the Eiffel Tower, we rallied and convinced our fearless leader, Dr. Chris Frost, that of course we needed to go to the Champs-Élysées because we hadn't. And yes, we might all be back in Paris, but not together in this point in time. So off we went to dine on the Champs-Élysées and shared our stories and reflections, which helped us move towards being and valuing our authentic selves. Before you, my students, my eyes were trained to see particular things and my heart to feel it in certain ways. And because of all our interactions, your eyes and hearts allowed me to see in you, and my soul changed. Without you, I would be so much less. To conclude, the scientific truth and my experiential and spiritual truths allow to convey the following message. Our adult purpose is to love others. In the words of Fromm, love isn't something natural, rather it requires discipline, concentration, patience, faith, and the overcoming of narcissism. It isn't a feeling, it is a practice. In modern parlance, that means a minimum, get off your phones when in the presence of another. As a guiding principle, I would suggest treat others not as you would want to be treated, but as you would want your most beloved person treated. It is amazing what we will accept for the self that we will not accept for our beloved. And travel your journey with the knowledge that in the end, we never ask the question, was I loved well enough? But rather, did I love my family, my community, my world well enough? Until our paths cross again, I wish you curiosity, purpose, and love. Thank you.